if you sort of envision this ideal kind of Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver commute in the 1950s, the father goes off to work, comes home in time for cocktails and Cronkite, and the wife has been home minding the children, maybe doing an errand or two, but I'm not sure, I don't know the exact number of women's workforce rates in the 50s, 25% or something.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the point where it's just about even, and so the miles, commuting miles are catching up to one another, almost just about even again, yet workplace commuting is kind of an increasingly small part of the whole traffic picture, which was surprising to me, one of the many things, and an increasingly sort of minor part of it, and all the other stuff that's making up our total kind of vehicle miles traveled, as they call it, are all these various other discretionary trips, taking the kids to school, shopping, all that other stuff. And they found that, even though that men and women were commuting in equal numbers, women were still doing a much larger percentage of these other sorts of trips. And as one person put it to me, if you look at women's trip rates, they increase with each child. So they put on more miles with each child in the family, and they said if you look at men's rates, it looks like they don't even have a family. So, I know some people are going to argue that I take my kid to school every day, but just broadly speaking, it seems that, So I titled the chapter, Why Women Cause More Congestion Than Men. This is a provocative marketing thing that authors need to do. This was actually said by someone at a state highway conference, and they were booed. But it's just, they're also suffering more from it. And this brings in interesting cases like is it SR 91 in Orange County, the HOT lane, where you can pay more to avoid congestion. And you find that women are I think, the primary majority of users on that facility. They need to often get to daycare because they charge you more if you're running late. And of course, all these changes are swept up with a whole other host of changes in the American kind of travel landscape. I walked to school when I was a kid, I think 60% plus did, and now it's down to 16%, I think. I was just in Houston, and coming from New York, this stuff is incredibly interesting and strange for me, but I passed by a school. It was about 2:30. It didn't let out till 3, and there was already a long queue of SUVs, sort of, and the person I was with called them the super moms. They were there early to sort of make, and you can't release a kid now from school into the world without someone there to pick them up in many places. And there's been some stuff in the news about parents who've tried to have their kid ride a bike to school, and the school basically called the police on them and said, or a child welfare agency. So, number of interesting changes in the American travel landscape, let's say.
Right. Interesting statistic I once heard, if I remember it correctly, is something like in 90% of the households that identify themselves as feminist households, the man does the driving when man and woman are in the car. So obviously, gender differences in transportation are still with us and still die very hard. Shifting to a different set of groups and different types of travel behavior. In the book, you talk about driving in Delhi, where I've driven myself. In India, they don't need amusement parks because you can ride a thrill ride every time you step out of your house onto the streets. Incredible collection of different types of vehicles, rickshaws, mopeds, vans, buses, etc. Widespread disregard for traffic rules, etc., etc. Lots of cities around the world have this type of reputation. And you wrote about the way that driving culture differs when you cross national boundaries. Talk a little bit about the kinds of things you found about how travel behavior differs from country to country, and maybe if you will speculate a little bit on what kinds of factors play into different types of national driving styles.
Sure. Well, when I first got to Delhi, I talked to the taxi driver and I said, "How do you cope with all this?" And I thought I was getting this little pearl of wisdom that he had crafted himself. He said, "Good horn, good brakes, good luck." And I thought this was a great little thing. I'll put that on a T-shirt or something. And then, of course, everyone I've talked to now who's gone to Delhi has heard this exact same thing from their taxi driver. So somehow it's gotten around. Maybe it was on a TV show or something. So I feel a little bit less special now. But yeah, and as someone put it to me who works with traffic in Delhi, we've begun living in discipline on the roads because we no longer feel it is indiscipline. And it kind of brings up this idea that traffic, on the one hand, it's an engineering system, but there's this whole other layer of culture. And I was on incredibly modern highways in China, much better than some of the stuff here currently. And you would see this very odd behavior, people stopping in the median strip to basically use the bathroom. So this is sort of a national learning curve going on, which is reflected in the fatality rates, unfortunately. But this is something you see in every place you go, and I was trying to. I'm still not sure whether it is culture or engineering, and which kind of plays a stronger part. For example, if any of you have been to Copenhagen, you'll notice that people very rigidly do not cross against the light as a pedestrian. And this is the city, of course, of the largest anarchist commune in the world, and these are law-abiding anarchists.